It was June 2, 2022, and the bright sun was shining down on the big city of London. A giant crowd of people stood along a long road called the Mall. They were all waving small flags with red, white, and blue colors called Union Jacks. High up on the famous balcony of Buckingham Palace, the most powerful family in all of Great Britain stood close together so everyone could see them. Queen Elizabeth II was 96 years old at the time. She had been sitting on the royal throne for 70 whole years. She had lived through many big wars, seen many different leaders come and go, and survived many family problems. This big celebration was called the Platinum Jubilee, and it was supposed to be a very special moment just for her to show how hard she had worked. Suddenly, big planes from the Royal Air Force flew right over the palace with a sound like loud thunder. They left long trails of red, white, and blue smoke behind them in the clear blue sky. The people on the ground cheered as loud as they could. The Queen looked very happy and gave a sweet smile. Everything seemed like a perfect fairy tale until a little boy named Prince Louis, who was only 4 years old, decided he had finally had enough of standing still. Little Prince Louis did not care about the fancy clothes or the important people standing around him. The noise from the big planes was just way too loud for his small ears. He took both of his hands and squeezed them over his ears as hard as he could. His face got all scrunched up, and he opened his mouth as wide as a lion to let out a giant scream. It was not a tiny, cute sound. It was a full-on, very loud scream right there on the most famous balcony in the entire world. The cameras from the news stations zoomed in close to catch his funny face. The whole world was watching him on their television sets, but Louis did not care even one little bit. He was just a small boy who wanted the loud noise to go away, and he did not mind showing everyone exactly how he felt. His funny reaction made people realize that even royal kids can have a hard time sitting still during long parties. It was the start of everyone falling in love with how honest and silly he could be during these very serious royal events. Later that same week, there was a big show called a pageant. The royal family all sat together in a special area to watch singers and dancers celebrate the Queen's long life. Prince Louis was sitting right next to his mother, Princess Catherine. His older sister, Princess Charlotte, was sitting on the other side of him. Charlotte was trying very hard to be on her best behavior. She had been told many times that she must act like a proper princess because the whole world would be watching her. But it seemed like Louis had not listened to those rules at all. First, he looked right at his mother and stuck his tongue out at her. The cameras caught it happening instantly, and the picture went all over the internet. Princess Catherine did not get angry, though. She just smiled and shook her head. She was probably thinking that being a mom to a 4-year-old is the same for everyone, even if you live in a palace. She knew that Louis was just being a playful little boy, who was getting a bit bored with all the long speeches and formal music. Then Louis did something even more surprising. He reached up with his hand and put it right over his mother's mouth to tell her to be quiet. He was shushing the Princess of Wales in front of millions of people watching on TV. His mother gently took his hand away and tried to get him to sit quietly, but Louis was just getting started. He began to dance in his seat. He wasn't just wiggling a little bit. He was bouncing up and down with a lot of energy. He made funny faces at the thousands of people in the crowd below him. He pointed at things he saw and laughed very loudly. At one point, a man named Mike Tyndall, who is married to Louis's cousin, leaned forward and gave him a look to tell him to behave. But Louis just looked back at him with a face that said, "You can't stop me." The people watching at home absolutely loved it because it was so funny. Within just a few minutes, Louis was the most talked about person on the internet. People were making funny pictures and sharing videos of him laughing and playing. It became the most popular part of the whole Jubilee. Even though Louis was being very silly, something happened that surprised a lot of people. The Queen did not try to stop him or tell him to be quiet. She did not even look like she was annoyed by his loud playing. Instead, she just looked over at her great-grandson and gave him a big, kind smile. After 70 years of being the Queen, she had seen almost everything you can imagine. She had met famous world leaders, gone to fancy dinners with hundreds of complicated rules, and traveled all over the globe. She knew that a 4-year-old boy bouncing around was not a big disaster at all. To her, it was a sweet reminder that the royal family is made of real people. Even though they are very famous and powerful, they are still a family with grandmothers, mothers, and little boys who do not care about fancy rules. Louis was the real star of the show that day, and he had no idea he was doing anything special. But this was only the beginning of his adventures, because the next time the world saw him, he would do something even more unforgettable. The next big event was the coronation of Louis's grandfather, King Charles III. This was the main event that everyone had been waiting for, and the whole world was watching again. The date was May 6, 2023. A very old and beautiful building called Westminster Abbey was packed with over 2,000 special guests. There were leaders from different countries, famous actors, and kings and queens from all over the world. Millions of other people were watching from their living rooms to see history being made. But for 5-year-old Prince Louis, history was not nearly as interesting as looking at the high ceiling of the old church. The service was very, very long. It lasted for more than 2 hours. There were a lot of prayers, long songs, and serious speeches. It was the kind of event that would make even a grown-up feel a little bit tired. For a boy who was only in kindergarten, it was almost impossible to sit still for that long without something fun to do. Right in the middle of the most serious part of the day, something funny happened. This was the moment when the Archbishop was putting a heavy gold crown on King Charles's head to officially make him the king. The cameras were focused on the king, but they also caught a glimpse of little Louis. He let out a massive, dramatic yawn. It was not a small, polite yawn that you try to hide behind your hand. It was a giant, wide-open-mouth yawn that seemed to tell everyone, "I am so bored, can we please go home now?" The timing was perfect because everything else was so serious. The choir was singing beautiful songs and everyone was saying, "God save the king." But Louis looked like he was about to fall fast asleep right in his chair. Very quickly, people on the internet started sharing pictures of the yawn. They wrote things like, "We feel the same way, Louis." People liked him because he was acting exactly how any 5-year-old would act during a long church service. He wasn't trying to pretend to be someone else. He was just being himself. But Louis was not done being the center of attention yet. Later that afternoon, the family went back to the balcony of Buckingham Palace. While the older royals stood very still and waved politely to the crowds, Louis was spotted dancing around again. His little body was twisting and bouncing, while his big brother George and sister Charlotte tried to stay very calm and professional. Some workers from the palace eventually had to come and quietly lead him away from the front of the balcony for a little break. Charlotte tried to help by giving him serious looks and whispering to him to stay in line. But Louis seemed to know that he was the person everyone wanted to see. He wasn't going to let a boring ceremony stop him from having a good time. If you think about it, it is pretty amazing. This is a child who yawned while his grandfather became king and danced while everyone else was being serious. The public loved him for it, but some people who study the royal family began to worry about his future. Behind all the laughs and the funny pictures, there was a more serious story happening. People started to talk about the special titles and jobs Louis would have when he grows up. There was a secret that involved a title that had a lot of problems attached to it. Every year, there is a parade called Trooping the Color to celebrate the monarch's birthday. For Prince Louis, this has become like his own personal stage. In 2025, when he was 7 years old, he was already an expert at making people laugh. During the carriage ride, he was seen talking and laughing with Prince George. He pointed at things in the crowd and completely ignored the hundreds of soldiers marching in perfect lines. Later, when the planes flew over again, Louis leaned way over to one side with his mouth wide open. He looked like he had never seen a plane before in his life, even though he sees them all the time. The people in the crowd cheered for him because they expected him to be the funny one in the family. However, things were a little different behind the scenes. People who can read lips watched the videos very carefully to see what the children were saying to each other. They saw Princess Charlotte turn to her little brother and say something very stern. She told him that he had to stop being silly and watch the parade like he was supposed to. But Louis did not listen to his big sister. He looked right at her and said, "I won't." Charlotte told him again to do as he was told, but Louis just said, "No." It was a 7-year-old boy refusing to follow orders right in front of millions of people. He was not going to back down at all. People who study body language noticed that Charlotte was acting like a little protector. She was trying to make sure things stayed quiet because her mother, Princess Catherine, had been feeling sick earlier that year. Charlotte did not want Louis to cause any extra stress or make their mom feel embarrassed. But Louis was too busy having fun in his own little world to notice. This brings us to a part of the story that the palace does not usually talk about. It is about a title called the Duke of York. For a very long time, this title was given to the second son of the king or queen. Louis is the second son of Prince William, so many people thought he would get this title one day. The title is very old and was first created over 600 years ago. It has been a big part of royal history for a long time. But lately, that title has become a bit of a problem. This is because of Louis's great-uncle, Prince Andrew. He was the last person to use that title, and he got into a lot of trouble. He was friends with some people who did very bad things, and it made the whole country upset with him. Because of this, the name Duke of York now makes people think of scandals and bad news. In 2025, Prince Andrew had to stop using his royal titles because of all the trouble. Now, experts think that the king might not give that title to Louis because it has such a bad reputation. So, while Louis is busy making funny faces, the adults are worried about what his future will look like. Will he get a different title instead? Some people think he might be given a brand new name so he doesn't have to deal with the bad history of his uncle. There is another thing that makes Louis's life different from other royals in the past. He is what people call the spare. This means he is the younger brother of the person who will be king one day. His uncle, Prince Harry, also grew up as the spare, and he has talked about how hard it was for him. He felt like he wasn't as important as his brother William. But Louis has something that Harry didn't have. He has his sister Charlotte to go through it with him. They can support each other and share the pressure of growing up in a palace. Experts say that having a sibling close in age who is in the same position can make a big difference in how happy a child feels as they get older. Prince William and Princess Catherine are working very hard to make sure Louis feels just as loved and important as his big brother George. They do not want him to feel like he is less important just because he won't be king. They try to treat all three of their children exactly the same. They want them to have emotional security, which is a fancy way of saying they want them to feel safe and happy in their hearts. They even moved to a smaller house called Adelaide Cottage so the kids could have a more normal life. In this house, they don't have a lot of servants living with them. The children even have to do chores around the house to earn their pocket money, just like other kids do. At a recent event, Louis showed up wearing a suit and a tie instead of his usual shorts. He looked very grown-up and did not make any funny faces at all. Some people think he is starting to realize that he has an important job to do, but his parents still want him to keep his fun spirit. Recently, another royal child has started to get some attention for being a bit of a rebel too. Her name is Lena Tyndall, and she is Louis's second cousin. At a wedding in 2026, Louis wasn't there, so Lena decided to be the funny one. While everyone was waiting in the rain after the church service, Lena started playing with a bright pink unicorn umbrella. She was spinning it around and dancing in the rain while her dad, Mike, tried to stay dry. She was laughing and having a great time, and she didn't care that it was a serious wedding. People on the internet loved her just as much as they loved Louis. They started calling her the new Prince Louis because she was so full of energy. It shows that there is a new generation of royal kids who aren't afraid to be themselves. They are different from the older royals who always had to be very stiff and serious. These kids are showing the world that you can be a royal and still have a lot of fun. As Louis gets older, people wonder if he will ever stop being the cheeky one. In June 2026, when he was 8 years old, he was back on the balcony for another parade. Even though he is getting taller, he still made some funny faces and pointed at the planes. He even leaned against the balcony because he was so excited to see the jets fly by. A man who used to work for the royal family said that people love Louis because he is so honest. He acts like a real kid, and that makes people feel closer to the royal family. Some experts have noticed that he is calming down a little bit, though. He is starting to look more focused during the long events. One expert said he looked very interested in the different types of planes, and maybe he will want to be a pilot like his dad and his grandfather one day. That would be a very exciting job for him to have when he grows up. The most important thing to remember is that Prince William and Princess Catherine want Louis to choose his own path. They might not force him to do royal jobs if he doesn't want to. He might decide to have a normal career outside of the palace when he is an adult. Whatever he chooses to do, he has already changed how people look at the monarchy. He has brought a lot of laughter and joy to people all over the world. In a world where everything often feels too scripted and fake, Louis is always real. He is a smart boy who will likely be a great help to his family in the future. We love him because he reminds us that it is okay to be yourself, even if you are a prince. Whether he is yawning at a coronation or dancing at a jubilee, Prince Louis will always be the one to watch. He is a little boy with a big personality, and that is why he will always be a favorite of the British people.